Welcome back to Days of. Today we will learn about the issue shaking Salem as a familiar face comes home with a new look, new layers, and a possible target on his back. Theo Carver's return, now portrayed by actor Tyler Joseph Andrews, and what it signals for the DiMera orbit and beyond. Homecoming at DiMera. At the DiMera mansion next week, Tony DiMera opens the door to family and to intrigue, greeting Theo with a warm embrace that feels both nostalgic and loaded with subtext, as if the return itself is also a summons to something larger than a reunion. The promo teases Tony extending not just a hug but a proposal, an invitation that sounds more like a test, the sort of DiMera blood right that often comes with strings, secrets, and long-term consequences. In parallel, whispers circulate that Tony's behavior has been off, fueling fan speculation about identity switches and hidden agendas, which raises the stakes for whatever role Theo is being drawn into at the estate. The recast and debut. Days of Our Lives has officially recast Theo with Tyler Joseph Andrews, with the actor set to debut in the Tuesday, September 9th episode, positioning the homecoming as both a personal chapter and a storyline pivot for the fall slate. The show's recent coverage highlights Andrews' training and recent credits, underscoring that this is a performer arriving with craft and fresh energy, and signaling the creative team's intent to let him define the role rather than imitate past interpretations. Multiple outlets have confirmed the date and teased footage of Theo's first appearance back at the mansion, reinforcing that his entrance is a narrative anchor for a week already heavy with DiMera developments. The long absence. Theo has been absent from Salem since August 2023, largely existing through off-screen mentions and phone calls that hinted at a life continuing elsewhere, even as those snippets began to foreshadow an emotional fracture that would pull him home. The drama finally surfaced in late July when news broke that Theo and Claire had split, a development delivered to viewers through family conversations, without the couple sharing their side on screen. That creative choice, ending the romance off canvas, felt less like a goodbye and more like a door opening, inviting a return, a reckoning, and perhaps a redefinition of Theo's priorities after a chapter spent far from the constant churn of Salem. Claire and Theo, after South Africa. For a time, Theo and Claire found stability together in South Africa, a quiet contrast to Salem's perpetual storms. The separation therefore lands with added weight because it fractures the one refuge that had provided balance to both characters. The show has not disclosed why the relationship ended, leaving space for future confessionals and character-driven reveals that can deepen Theo's perspective as he reconnects with family and friends. Historically, their bond has threaded through overlapping triangles and painful missteps, particularly around Sierra, which makes any new information about their breakup more than backstory. It's the lens through which Theo might choose allies and paths now that he's back. Family support system. Abe Carver's concern has been palpable for months, his phone calls serving as lifelines to a son in pain, and his on-screen steadiness promising a safe harbor when Theo walks through the door again. Paulina Price will add her voice and presence to that support, creating the kind of familial net that Days often uses to launch characters into harder tests, bolstered by love but not insulated from consequences. This dual-anchored backing from Abe and Paulina suggests Theo may have the freedom to choose carefully, rather than react defensively, when DiMera enticements land at his feet. Tony's proposal. Promotional teases frame Tony's proposal to Theo as intriguing and potentially dangerous, especially given that Tony's recent demeanor has sparked theories that Andre might be back in play beneath the familiar face. Whether Tony is Tony or a pretender, the offer itself signals DiMera business rather than personal errands. Strategy, leverage, and a useful nephew whose outsider perspective could be an advantage in corporate or family feuds. With rumblings of agendas touching Gabby and broader DiMera maneuvering, Theo's acceptance or refusal could determine whether he becomes a pawn, a partner, or a quiet spoiler operating with Abe's moral compass in his pocket. Chad, Kat, and Counsel. Theo's circle won't end with family. Chad DiMera is poised for a heart-to-heart that blends empathy with pragmatism, and in the process, the conversation could become a mirror for both men navigating romance after hard choices. As Chad settles into his feelings for Kat Green, complications remain, and Theo's perspective, unburdened by Chad's history yet attuned to loss, could sharpen the edges of that storyline while giving Theo a confidant beyond Abe. Expect reciprocity. Chad, having lived through the fallout of DiMera decisions, can outline the cost of proximity to power before Theo decides how deep to wade into Tony's orbit. What broke Theo and Claire? Because the breakup happened off-screen, the narrative is ripe for reinterpretation. Work pressures, mismatched timelines, a reemergence of old wounds around trust, or even Claire's career ambitions eclipsing shared domestic plans are all plausible lanes the show can explore. Days has a history of revisiting off-screen ruptures with layered reveals that refract through existing canon, especially given the pair's prior entanglements with Sierra and the emotional fallout that accompanied them. However the reveal lands, the specifics matter less than the function. The breakup creates narrative oxygen for Theo to reconnect, recalibrate, and possibly reimagine both his identity and his romantic future in Salem. The actor and the legacy. Tyler Joseph Andrews steps into a role with Lineage, following Cameron Johnson and Kyler Pettis, whose tenure included an Emmy win, yet outlets have been careful to note that Andrews arrives to make the character his own. His background and recent credits suggest a performer who can play interiority and resilience, qualities essential to Theo's canonically thoughtful nature and the moral complexity of any DiMera-adjacent plotline. The show appears to be cultivating anticipation rather than nostalgia, positioning this recast as an evolution rather than a restoration. The risk and reward. The DiMera mansion is both home and hazard, and Theo's return at Tony's invitation practically guarantees he will need to navigate the thin line between belonging and being used, especially if corporate battles intensify this fall. If Tony's proposal dovetails with larger family machinations, Theo's best defense may be transparency with Abe and cautious alliances, with peers who recognize how quickly DiMera favors become debts. That precarious balance, heart-led choices inside power-heavy rooms, sets up exactly the kind of long arc tension Days thrives on across sweeps. What comes next? Promos indicate that Theo's arrival is part of a week already packed with high-emotion beats, from family catch-ups to prison visits and DNA questions, meaning his scenes will cut across storylines rather than exist in isolation. Thematically, the show is leaning into legacy versus reinvention, making Theo's post-breakup identity search an ideal thread to weave through DiMera politics and renewed friendships. Most importantly, the narrative signals that Theo is not a cameo but a catalyst, the kind of return that can bend arcs and reframe loyalties as false stories accelerate. Next, we're diving into the intriguing homecoming of Theo Carver to the DiMera mansion and what it might mean for Salem's ever-twisting plots. A homecoming filled with hidden layers. In the grand halls of the DiMera mansion, where opulent chandeliers cast long shadows over marble floors, a simple hug can mask a multitude of intentions. Tony DiMera's warm reception of Theo isn't merely a heartfelt reunion. It's a carefully choreographed scene designed to evoke trust and fond memories. By escorting Theo back to this iconic family estate, complete with its secret passages and whispered histories, Tony assumes the role of a protective patriarch. This move not only fosters a sense of security but also creates an ideal, secluded environment for unveiling a significant proposition. The deliberate phrasing of Tony's invitation suggests meticulous planning, perhaps tied to long-standing DiMera enterprises or efforts to polish the family's tarnished public image amid recent scandals. The shifting bond between them. Tony DiMera has always been the epitome of refined strategy, preferring subtle negotiations and charismatic persuasion over brute confrontations. He's the family member who navigates alliances with a velvet touch, anticipating moves several steps ahead like a master chess player in a tailored suit. Theo Carver, on the other hand, embodies straightforward reasoning, relying on sharp intellect and unwavering principles to cut through deception. His ability to detect subtle inconsistencies and maintain focus amid turmoil makes him invaluable. Together, their contrasting styles form a powerful synergy. Tony sets the elaborate stage, while Theo charts the most efficient path forward. This partnership resembles that of a seasoned advisor and his astute protege, focused on calculated maneuvers rather than reckless upheaval. Any collaboration they pursue would likely be methodical, discreet, and aimed at precise outcomes, drawing from Tony's diplomatic heritage and Theo's analytical prowess honed through personal challenges. Reasons behind Tony's outreach to Theo. Tony's decisions are multifaceted, often blending personal gain with broader family interests. At this juncture, various factors might be at play. For one, aligning with Theo enhances the DiMera clan's appearance of unity, especially when external pressures threaten to unravel their legacy. On the business front, Theo's composed demeanor could serve as a stabilizing force within DiMera Enterprises, helping Tony manage internal rivalries without escalating tensions among ambitious relatives. There's also a protective element. With potential threats looming over the family, perhaps echoes of past feuds involving figures like Stefano, Tony might seek to keep Theo nearby, leveraging his keen observations for early warnings. Additionally, this could be a subtle loyalty test, starting with a modest request to gauge Theo's commitment before delving into more complex affairs. A tactic Tony has employed in previous Salem intrigues. Theo's potential motivations for returning. Theo's decision to step back into the DiMera world isn't solely driven by Tony's summons. He has his own compelling reasons. Primarily, safeguarding his close circle, such as his father Abe or sister Lonnie, could motivate him, especially if DiMera conflicts risk spilling over into their lives. By engaging directly, Theo positions himself to preempt any fallout. Furthermore, this opportunity might grant him a meaningful role in the family's narrative, allowing him to influence decisions rather than remain a passive observer. Theo's inclination toward neat resolutions means he could be drawn to unraveling knots of deception or streamlining chaotic elements with minimal disruption. On a deeper level, embracing such a challenge represents personal evolution, demonstrating his growth in handling high-stakes situations while staying true to his ethical core, much like his past experiences navigating Salem's turbulent relationships. Unpacking the mysterious proposal. What exactly is Tony proposing? Several targeted ideas align with their combined talents. One possibility is a covert review of DiMera's internal operations, where Theo analyzes data patterns to uncover hidden betrayals or inefficiencies, disguised as routine maintenance. Alternatively, it could involve a public relations boost, like launching a charity venture linked to the Carver family name, with Theo as the authentic spokesperson to shift focus from negative press. Tony might also request Theo to act as a neutral intermediary in board decisions, building coalitions without overt bias. Another angle, positioning Theo as an unassuming ally to lure out concealed enemies, while Tony orchestrates from behind the scenes. Or perhaps it's about mediating family disputes, using Theo's steady influence to de-escalate rivalries among the DiMeras. These options steer clear of overt villainy, emphasizing targeted, forward-thinking strategies that could even yield positive community impacts, reflecting Tony's evolved approach since his earlier, more tumultuous days in Salem. Could it be truly harmless? In the unpredictable realm of Salem, innocence is often a matter of perspective, but genuine benevolence isn't out of the question. Tony might be extending a legitimate employment opportunity, tailored to Theo's skills with built-in independence. It could manifest as a joint Carver-DiMera initiative for local betterment, such as community programs that humanize the family's corporate facade. On a more intimate note, it might be a sincere plea for assistance in repairing fractured bonds or ensuring the welfare of aging relatives, prioritizing kinship over cunning. Should peril arise, it would probably stem from external agitators rather than any malicious intent from Tony or Theo, preserving the possibility of a straightforward, uplifting storyline amid the soap's dramatic flair. Potential dangers and warning signs. The DiMera orbit inevitably draws complications, turning even well-intentioned plans into quagmires. Key indicators include overheard private discussions that seem suspiciously timed, hinting at eavesdroppers with their own agendas. Tony's choice of words, like interim solution or safeguarding measures, might veil underlying risks. Theo's insistence on ethical boundaries, no shady dealings, complete openness, could reveal the proposal's true nature. Adherence suggests defense, while evasion points to murkier depths. Also, watch for indirect gains. If a rival suddenly falters post Theo's arrival, it might signal closer ties between events than apparent, echoing historical DiMera ploys. The high costs at play. Errors in judgment carry steep prices. Theo risks becoming a focal point for adversaries if his involvement exposes him as pivotal to Tony's strategy. Within the family, this alliance could ignite jealousies, prompting retaliatory schemes from sidelined DiMeras. Broader repercussions might include scandals affecting corporate oversight, inviting investigations or investor unrest if details leak. These elements heighten the tension, underscoring the precarious balance of power in Salem's elite circles. The probable form of their plan. Considering Tony's polished style and Theo's moral compass, the likeliest setup is a defensive strategy cloaked as a professional venture. Imagine Theo delving into records to highlight discrepancies, fostering stability without aggression. It's scheming only in its secrecy and tactical benefits, targeting issues rather than individuals for elimination, aligning with their shared preference for resolution over conquest. Clues for the coming episodes. Observe the setting of their next discussion. An executive suite implies boldness, a quiet library caution, or an open venue a bid for normalcy. Note who disrupts. A notorious interferer signals brewing trouble, while a reliable friend suggests Tony seeks validation. Any item Tony presents, a dossier for evidence, a token for entry, or a device for communication, often foreshadows the plot's direction in Salem's tradition. Wrapping thoughts. Indeed, a strategy is unfolding, yet it feels more like a shield than a trap. Tony is tapping Theo's perceptiveness to tidy up entanglements peacefully, and Theo will participate provided it remains honorable. Any threats will probably emerge from lurking outsiders, not the duo's core intentions.